So I know that none of you have ever made a mistake, but I have. I've made tons of them, and 3D printing is no exception. So I thought, why not go over the top 5 mistakes that I made with 3D printing when I started, in the hope that I can prevent you from having to go through them too.
I'll save you.
Now, speaking of mistakes, it would be a mistake to not like and subscribe to this video.
Say what?
Here at Pulsegate Games, we are dedicated to making your tabletop experience the best that it can be. Whether that's 3D printing, painting miniatures, learning how to play the game.
Oh, I hate this game! I hate this game!
Or just learning about it.
Go tabletop miniatures.
So please like and subscribe to be notified every time one of our videos comes out, so that together we can make your tabletop gaming experience the best it can be.
So we can make it better?
I know there are a lot of different kind of printers out there, but today we're going to be focusing on FDM printers. And the reason we're going to be doing that is because the first printer I bought was an Elegoo Neptune 2, and it is an FDM printer. So let's get started. Number 1. Stick to one kind of filament. If you're anything like me, you've been through 20, 30 rolls of filament, and most of them have been from different vendors, different styles, different colors, different things like that. And the reason I'm saying to stick to the same one is because every filament is different. Okay? And I don't mean just different colors. I don't mean different thicknesses, which they can be. I mean that they're different. The process that they were made was different. And so your printer is going to print them differently. And that doesn't sound like a problem. It doesn't sound like an issue until you realize that some filament prints the best at 200 degrees, others at 210, others at 190, and things like that. And so every single time you get this new roll of filament, you're going to have to find out its sweet spot.
This is the sweet spot.
For most prints, it's not that big of a deal. Especially if you're doing big things, it doesn't really matter so much. But when you're trying to get that fine detail, if you're trying to print things for a tabletop game, for miniatures and things like that, that detail is crucial. Now, I am a big proponent of buying, cheap things. Okay, tabletop gaming shouldn't cost you an arm and a leg. And I'm not saying don't buy the cheapest filament. I'm saying that once you find a filament that you like, a filament that works and does what you need it to do, stick with it.
Hope you stick with it.
The prices will go up and they'll go down over the years. They always do. But if you stick to that, your printing will just be easier because you'll know the sweet spot of that filament. Could it change between rolls of the same kind of filament? Sure. Is it likely? Not very much. Okay, one of the big things with 3D printing is that if you have an issue, you have to be able to troubleshoot it. And being able to say it's not the filament right off the bat is huge. So try to stick to the same brand. If you want to switch through colors, that should be fine. They should be all made the same way if you're sticking to the same brand. And the color shouldn't change that much. But save yourself the headache of having to learn the ups and downs of every new roll of filament you buy. Stick to the ones that you're comfortable with instead of just buying whatever's cheapest. Now, can that be done buying whatever's cheapest? Yeah, of course. I mean, I've done it a lot.
I'm not poor, I'm broke.
But in the end, I've found that it's worth the price. It's worth the few extra dollars to just get one that you know will work and that you're comfortable with. The second one on my list should be simple, because most of you have seen KISS, which stands for Keep It Simple, Stupid. This is pretty simpler, but it's kills because it will kill you if you don't do it. And that is keep it level, stupid. And what I mean by that is keep your build plate level. Now, depending on what supports you have underneath your build plate, depending on your printer, depending on a million factors, This one might not apply to you, especially if you have like an auto leveling system. This one won't apply to you too much.
Oh, because you're rich, sir.
But if you don't have an auto leveling system, keeping it level is critical. I have taken my printer apart on multiple occasions because I thought something was wrong. I thought there was a clog. I thought there was, something wrong with my extruder, something wrong with a bunch of different parts, only to find out that it wasn't printing properly because my build plate wasn't level.
You want to experience true level?
Because it was a little higher in one corner than it should have been, and so the filament wasn't coming out, or it was clogging up the nozzle, or because it was too low and it had nothing to stick to, and so it just started spiraling around the nozzle until I had just this nice solid mass of plastic around the nozzle of my printer, which if you've dealt with that, I know your pain. It's okay.
When it's together.
So keep it level, and if you think you should be able to print 10 different things and it should stay level, that's fine. But the first thing you should check if you start having issues is whether or not that build plate is level. There's tons of videos out there that will tell you how to level the build plate. My favorite is just with a normal piece of paper. Put it under the nozzle, have it drop down. If I can move it around just a little bit, just enough, then I know I'm good. Okay? And find your way that leveling works for you. And if it becomes too much of a nightmare, get a BL Touch. Get something. Get an auto leveling system so that you don't have to deal with it anymore. Because I cannot tell you how many problems I've had because of an unlevel build plate. Now, number 3 goes along with that whole process. Once you get your filament, once you made sure your build plate is level, a good thing to do is to calibrate. And I don't mean, adjust your physical printer. What I mean is find the sweet spot for your PLA, for whatever you're printing. Find your temperature, find your overhang, find what you can. And you can do that by printing temperature towers or, overhang tests. There are a million different tests that you can find on Thingiverse that have walkthroughs on how to do them. If your print's stringing, could be your heat.
Ugh, why is it so hot down here?
Could be your speed that you're printing at. Could be a support setting that's wrong. It could be your extrusion settings. It could be your retraction settings. Okay, there's a bunch of things it could be. So the first thing that you should do is sit down and find the sweet spot. If you spend an hour finding that sweet spot, doing a couple test prints, doing a couple benchies, finding out where you're at, it will save you a ton of pain.
You want me to show you a little trick to take your mind off that pain?
In the long run, it'll save you from starting a helmet, printing a helmet, only to find out halfway through that the inside is a stringing nightmare, or to find bubbles on the outside because you're putting out too much filament as you print. There's a bunch of different things that can affect it. So find that sweet spot. I'll put links below to some of the torture tests, some of the benchies, some of the things that I've used that have really helped me. Temperature towers are awesome. They can be a little tricky to set up. So I'll link you the one that always helped me the most and that I thought wasn't too difficult when trying to find that perfect middle ground. Number 4. And this one is the one that makes me want to just punch myself in the face sometimes. And that is upgrades. Everyone you talk to is going to push upgrades to your printer. Upgrade this, upgrade that. You got to print this. I know people that the first entire roll of filament that they buy goes to printing out upgrades for their printer. You don't need to do that. The printer was sold to you because it can print and it can print well. Now, is it going to be printing incredibly well? It depends on which one you bought. If you bought a high-end printer, don't worry about that stuff unless you want it cosmetically. A low-end printer, honestly, there's only one upgrade that I would suggest right off the bat, and that is getting new springs. Getting new springs for that build plate. A stiffer set of springs will reduce the amount of times that you have to level, and it will just make your life a lot easier. And it's kind of nice to be able to, take that little bit of your printer apart, get to know your printer a little better, take it out for a drink, just spend some time with it. And once you've done that, you'll know how things work a little better. But the springs are cheap. You can generally find them on Amazon, $10 or less. And that's it. You can replace the extruder. You can replace the hot end. You can get different nozzles. You can do a million other things. You can print out a bunch of upgrades. You can buy a bunch of upgrades, but none of them are necessary. I mean, the springs aren't even necessary. I probably printed with mine for 6-7 months without a lot of issues without the springs. But everywhere I went, people were telling me to do this, that, and the other. And so I ended up buying the springs. So if you don't want to buy the springs, don't. You don't have to listen to me. I mean, who am I anyway, right? So that's what I would suggest. Don't worry about the upgrades. Get to know your printer. Get to find out if you like how it prints before you decide to change everything. You know, and then if you get to that point where you realize, this needs to be different. I need bigger overhangs. I want to be able to do less supports, things like that. Sure. Go ahead. Do some upgrades. But get to know your printer first before you waste all your time and money on upgrades that you might never need. Okay, and number 5. This one is huge to me because when you first get into 3D printing, there are certain parts of it that are going to feel like an absolute mystery. You're not going to know what to do. And the main thing I feel like is going to be in your slicer. Okay, whether you're using the standard slicer that came with your printer, whether you're using Cura, Prusa, whatever it is. There are so many things that you can change and alter and mess around with in there that most people will just avoid that altogether and just stick to standard settings. Don't. Get in there. Learn what those settings do. If your slicer doesn't tell you what each one of them does, find a YouTube video that does. Eventually, I will do a YouTube video where I break down the ones I think you need to know. But there are things in there that can completely change the game and change how you print. So figure them out. Learn what they are. Don't make the mistake that I did and wait a year, using whatever settings people had sent me before you start finding out your own. I reached out to one of my friends of the channel and asked him, if there's anything that he thought I should add to this list. And his answer was that 3D printing is like the Wild West, in that there's a lot of unknowns even now. And sometimes you just have to jump in and figure things out.
Jump in, Spike!
And he's right. Sometimes you got to just jump in and mess with some settings and figure things out. The funny thing is that if you look long enough and hard enough on the internet, you'll find things that people have printed that no one else can duplicate. You will find miniatures that look like they were printed with resin, even though they weren't. And that's because somebody did the homework, made the tests, did everything to find a way to print that way. And you can too. Are there guides out there that you should follow to start out? Of course. But the reason that they're able to make those guides is because they went in and they did the hard stuff first and figured out what everything did and tested it. You can do that too. And you don't have to go crazy. I mean, there's different ways of getting into the Cura settings where, you could do expert level, advanced level, intermediate levels. Start with something that's easy, figure out what it does, change a few things. I promise you won't regret it. Now, sometimes you're going to get stuff that comes out absolute garbage, but that's part of the learning process. And once after you've made 10, 20 little changes to things and your print comes out and it's absolutely perfect and just the way you wanted it to, you'll realize why 3D printing in itself is a hobby and just how much fun that hobby can be. Thanks for joining me as we go over these 5 mistakes, these 5 things that I wish I had done or maybe not done when it came to 3D printing and when it came to getting started. I hope that they have been useful to you in some way or another. And I hope that those of you watching this who have experienced something that was a nightmare for you will share it in the comments. Let me know that hard thing that you had to learn the hard way and how you got past it. Let me know what things you're scared of doing because you don't know what the results will be. And we can try and figure it out together. Like I said, we're here to make your tabletop gaming experience better. And that includes your 3D printing experience. So leave a comment. Let us know what you would like to see. Let us know what we can do better. And hopefully we can help you make your tabletop gaming world a little better. As always, don't spend so much time making your world, printing your world, that you forget to spend some time in it. Until next time. So I know that none of you have ever made a mistake.